Hello everyone and welcome back to another Subnautica 2 video. Today we're going to be covering the latest devlog posted by Unknown Worlds, Making Unknown Worlds. I was tempted to make another immediate reaction video, but I'm generally not happy with how rushed and not thought out they are. Heck, Abraxas commented on it and now I feel like I'm not putting my best out there. Well, about as best as you can get from someone reacting to announcements from a studio. This isn't groundbreaking content, but anyway, without further ado, let's get into things. Following on from Natural Selection 2 means that Subnautica 2 will be set in a time where humanity's down to its last scraps, far in the future from every game we've seen previously. For a quick rundown of what happened from Subnautica to Natural Selection 2, I'll be linking a video down below, as I personally don't have all the knowledge to fill you in properly. It says here that the world is completely hostile. You can't eat or breathe, and you must modify your own biology to survive. They mention alien DNA seeping into you, but is that a passive system or something you trigger manually? I'm personally hoping it'll be a mix where you adapt over time to whatever environment you're in, but larger changes require greater intervention, closer to something like a skill tree. From what we saw of the DNA analyzer, I'd assume it's more likely that we'll have DNA as a resource that you'll need to manage to maintain or unlock certain things, and I do feel like this is backed up by the element on the HUD next to the food and water that treats it as such. This section seems to show either water currents or the migration routes of jellyfish-like species. Whatever it is, it seems fairly reminiscent of the currents from the initial trailer. I'd guess this concept is showing off an early traversal loop demonstrating how multiple paths can funnel you to the same point, but I could also see them being used as an earlier game way to get around the map, or as one-way paths to unique underground areas, especially with what seems to be a much greater scale of this game. The earlier shot looks to be in the same biome, so those artificial caves on the left probably lead to one of those first major story locations. They could be volcanic or mud-formed, or even placeholder assets, but it's hard to tell. The rock thermal curve tag supports the volcanic formation theory though, especially with how similar the caves look to the mud pools in places like Rotorua in New Zealand. Since that thermal activity ties into the graveyard biome, this zone likely serves as a dead zone starter area safer than most. There's minimal life here aside from simple plants and growths, but again that could be due to the early nature of everything we're being shown. But I guess we'll have to wait to find out later this year with early access. Here we see what appears to be a new base piece in an unpowered or broken state. With confirmation that the scrap pieces are Wreckage, I'm assuming previous human research teams arrived before us. The mention of blight suggests a disease-driven calamity, possibly mirroring the original Kara narrative. Here's an example of that Wreckage here. The asset manager labels it as being in the Jelly Plateaus, likely the new counterpart of the original Grassy Plateaus, full of acid anemones. It's still within the start zone _ central area, so we haven't strayed far from spawn with what we've been shown so far. The outline is packed with information, but unfortunately nothing we know too much about. Cicada could be our crashed ship or the prior team, explaining the scattered debris, and we can also now see new base building parts, ceiling lights, a power grid capacitor, hinting at shared power networks, and supply crates akin to the old food and battery boxes found in previous games. With the existence of a capacitor, will this mean that generators no longer store much of their own? Will this be used simply as an expansion of energy storage? With how much everything seems to be moving in a more fluid direction, with power networks being turned into a grid and resources being decimal units, maybe energy will also be used in some more interesting and varied ways? At the bottom left is a kelp forest, potential creepvine homage there, alongside overgrown ruins, sparse plains, and the graveyard biome. Altera appears again, likely tied into the unpowered structure we saw before. On the right, there's a natural vent of some sort. It might be the end of a current path, as we talked about before, or it could be a thermal vent as seen in the first game, fitting the graveyard's geothermal theme. It just depends on if it's active or not. We get another view of the biome names, including the world tree. That could denote a literal structure or area, or it could simply be the overarching biome system used for managing open worlds. Who knows? I could be being stupid. And now it's time for mineral identification. The cubic node there's probably lead, the yellow puffball is probably sulfur, and the adjacent clump's salt. The spiky nodules on that one suggest magnetite, and the gold-coloured ones are, well, probably gold. The scrunch spheres are likely titanium, and the smaller crystal behind them is probably lithium. The large clear node, quartz, and the right-hand cluster, copper. But this is all assuming the materials will be sticking to the same range as the original games. Anyway, there is more I could go into, things I could explain and more that Unknown Worlds has said, but I'm mostly looking to cover the things that interest me to talk about, hence why there's so much less to cover in this one compared to the first devlog. It was far more interesting getting a glimpse into how they operate, but a lot of the video was just covering their processes and interests without anything we didn't already know. But that doesn't mean I'm not trembling with anticipation, waiting for the next devlog. Thanks for watching, please come again for the next one, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.